Hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Jason Wright Show. Today, I am bringing you an episode. It's a reaction video to a video that Joe Hudson, a performance coach that I talk about a lot on the show lately, he's really kind of on the come up. Over the last year, I felt a little bit better whenever I found out that Chris Williamson had just discovered him about the same time I did, which was about a year ago. He's by far one of the most insightful performance coaches that I have discovered in quite some time. And I just happened to come across this video whenever I was shaving this morning. So what I'll do a lot of times whenever I'm shaving and getting ready, I'll try to put on something positive before I get the day started. And I went to Joe Hudson's YouTube channel and I found this video about self-reliance. Now, here's why I chose it. It's because it's one of these things that I know I deal with quite a bit. It's a toxic form of self-reliance. It's basically this idea that I don't need anyone. No one's ever going to be there for me. This world is just between me and Jesus, and that's it. No one's going to help me. If anybody's going to help me, it's Jesus. Other than that, the other humans are never going to be there for me. And I know that's not true. I know it's wrong. But it wasn't until I watched this video that I understood why I feel that way. And here's the key takeaway for me. As someone who has made the motto of his show, improve always in all ways, I figure that it makes sense to figure out how to most effectively improve those deficits that I may have in my own personal being. And this is one that I want to improve upon. I don't want to be someone who limits my success because I think I'm out on an island and can't depend on others to help me. That's never going to be a good idea because there's people around me, for example, in my businesses right now. I have some of the smartest minds I've ever met in my life that are my business partners that I can go to and ask for help. But if I cling to this idea that I can't depend on anyone, then I won't go to them. And that doesn't limit anyone but me. And so as I listen to Joe describe how we get to the point to where we create this, and I don't think he said toxic self-reliance, but that's what I'm calling it because I believe it's toxic. And so anything that's going to corrode or keep us from being the best version of ourselves, I think can have kind of a toxic element to it. And I think that's what this does. So with that, I'm going to go through this video and I'm going to stop at different points to explain to you the case in point, I am a real case study in so much of what he's talking about here. So I don't want this to be like a here, let me tell you about me session. The reason why I want to do it to where so much of it that I can talk to you about how it's impacted me and how it just is literally, I could have sat down with Joe and he would have had a blast with me because he's saying so many things that I can identify with. I understand this is why I have become so toxically self-reliant, that I know I'm not unique. I know that someone out there is going to hear this and the light bulb's going to go off and you go, that's me. And that's now that I can identify the why, then I can figure out the how that will lead to personal improvement. So let's get started. And as always, this episode is brought to you by Authentic Health Partners. If you would, please go to shopauthentic.health.com. Look for the foundational stack. I take it every single day. It's why I'm 85 years old and I look like this. I'm just kidding. I'm not 85. I'm 51. I tell you guys that all the time. But nevertheless, shopauthentic.health.com. Check it out. And also use promo code Jason and you will save 10% on your order. So with that, let's get to Joe Hudson and understanding why some of us become a little too self-reliant. Let's go.
Joe, I want to go deeper on self-reliance. We had a podcast on this a little while ago and people have been asking questions. And I recently saw you talking about self-reliance in front of a group of people.
Yeah.
And it really shook them to the core.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. When they start to see where the patterns come from, how it's holding them back, and the ways that they've been self-sabotaging through running the self-reliance pattern.
Yeah, great. I think that's a great one. Yeah, it's been really impactful on my clients as well, just when they really get to see the pattern.
Yeah.
And how deep it is. It's really quite a thing. Yeah.
So could we just really quickly recap what we talked about last time so that we can catch people up?
Briefly, self-reliance is the pattern that you think you have to do everything yourself, and therefore you have a hard time getting help and support that you need to be able to feel great and or take your life to the next level. So it gets in the way of a lot of CEOs and managers and people who have just learned that like it's all on me, and that is the pattern, and it totally slows people down. Generally, if you have a self-reliance pattern when you're an adult, it means that as a child, you learned very specifically that your needs weren't going to be met. So, in fact, typically what you're taught, and this is about 90% of the time, you get taught that your job is to take care of your parent rather than for your parent to take care of you.
All right, so real quick, this is where I perked up. My parents divorced when I was 4 years old, and not one time through any of it did either one of them stop to say, hey, bud, you okay? How are you doing? My mother constantly told me all the ills that my dad had done to her during the marriage. Not so much my dad, but my stepmother told me all the ills that had befallen my father as a result of my biological mother. She said it to me constantly. And in fact, I mean, it was almost a case in point. My stepmom was constantly telling me all the things that I needed to do from the age of 4 when she came into my life, her and my stepbrother and stepsister, that all the things I needed to do to stand up for my father, to make sure that he was well represented by me, a 4, 5, 6, 7, however young I was. And so no one ever really said, hey, dude, are you okay? It was this constant effort to make sure that, because they were the only ones that I ever heard about that were suffering through the divorce. And so my entire childhood was me trying to make sure that I was performing in a way that did not upset or inconvenience Frank and Donna. That's literally what it was. And so whenever Joe said this, that's when I was like, oh my goodness, I'm really onto something here. And it started to peel back the onion and help me to figure out. And I know a lot of you listening to this, if you're a Gen Xer like me, we lived the generation where divorce just started to explode. So I guarantee you, you're going to see some of yourself in some of the things he's saying, and why you may have created this idea that you just can't depend on anybody. It's just you alone. You are an army of one fighting this world, and you're never going to depend on anyone. Even if you're married right now and in a beautiful and healthy marriage, you're just like, I love my wife, I love my husband, but I'm never going to completely depend on them, because I know at the end of the day, I can't depend on anybody but myself. Well, here's where some of that comes from.
And so that might mean I need to please my parents so I don't get criticized, or please my parents so they don't get angry, or please my parents so that they don't get sad. So that's the seed of self-reliance, because you're being taught, oh, no one's going to be there for me in at least X, Y, and Z ways. Mm-hmm. And so I have to figure out how to do it for myself, because I can't depend on someone else to take care of me. And that's where the pattern comes from.
Yeah. And recently when I heard you talking to a group in a way that we haven't talked about on the podcast yet, you had a list of 5 patterns. 5 different kinds of aspects of this self-reliance pattern that show up for folks.
Yeah. The 5 patterns are that you have a hard time asking for what you want. You have a hard time identifying your needs. You have an issue with authority, that you feel like it's your job to take care of other people, and you have a hard time expressing when you're hurt.
Joe is good. Joe is good. Whenever someone asks me, if I'm in a room with a group of people and the topic of where should we go eat comes up, I am going to take it as my job to try to figure out where everyone else wants to eat and narrow it down to that. I never even consider where I want to go to eat. I may have somewhere I want to go to eat, but I'm never going to do that. Same thing with Jimla and I. When Jimla starts saying, where do you want to eat? All I do is start running through my head, where do I think she really wants to eat? And let me see if I can guess that and land on it. That's all I do. It's not even a consideration for me as to where I want to go eat. The other thing about that, so that would be kind of like the challenge of understanding what you want. Another one is admitting when something has hurt you. I tell Jimlin all the time, because Jimlyn is real big on, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. And she never wants to hurt my feelings. And I always tell her, you can't hurt my feelings. I will not allow you or anyone else to hurt my feelings. I get to choose if my feelings are hurt. But the bottom line is, here's a little secret between just between us. Don't tell anybody, okay? I get my feelings hurt. I do. But I can't let anybody know that. I cannot say that hurt me. And here's why. I was raised in a household, and many of you were raised in a household, where recognizing the offense is worse than the offense that was cast at you. Good example. Case in point. My father did not come to my wedding, to mine and Jimlyn's wedding. Didn't come. Didn't text me the day of my wedding. Didn't call me the day of my wedding. Whenever Jimlyn and I got back from our honeymoon, my stepmother was in the hospital at the time. We came directly from having traveled overseas from Paris, France, to DFW Airport in Dallas, went straight to Sulphur Springs, went to her hospital bed to see her, see how she was doing. My dad did not say, how was the honeymoon? So happy for you guys. Sorry I couldn't make the wedding. Nothing. He looked out the window most of the time. Didn't even talk to us. Do you know why? It's because whenever he told me, because of my stepmother's malady, she had had a stroke at the time, that she wasn't going to go to the wedding, he decided he couldn't go to the wedding. And because I didn't hug him and praise him and make him feel better about his decision to not attend his son's wedding, then that was actually worse than him not coming to the wedding. You see, that's the way it works, and that's the way it was in my family. If my father said something rude, sarcastic, demeaning, out of anger, that paled in comparison to the way it would make him feel if he knew I got mad about it. Here's a great example of it. God, this is going to turn into a Jason Wright therapy session, so just deal with me, folks. But no, really, I know some of you see yourself in this. There was one time I came in from school. I was in high school, and I said something, and then my dad made some real passive-aggressive remark. That's the way we grew up. The language of my household was passive aggression, which was what my father called reading between the lines. There was never just direct communication. There was never, hey, I'm angry with you. Is it founded? Can you tell me if I should be angry with you? I'm hurt. You've hurt my feelings as your father. Can you help me deal with that? Oh, Dad, I didn't mean that. Here's what I really meant. But no, instead there was just all this passive aggression flying around. He made some passive aggressive remark. But I knew, as Joe Hudson is talking about here, my job is to make sure that my dad is always happy and never angry. That's goal number one. Primary objective number one is for my dad to not be disappointed in me, to not be upset with me. And so I took the passive aggressive remark. I went upstairs and I punched a hole in my bedroom door. I freaked out. I was scared to death. Not because I messed up a door. My dad was a contractor. We could get any door we wanted. I could get the door replaced like in 5 minutes. It was not the door. I could have cared less about the door. I was so afraid of my dad knowing that the reason I had hit the door was because of what he had said. That's what I was scared of. I was so afraid. And so I lied. Man, whenever the door was discovered, I lied through my teeth. I lied like Anthony Weiner after getting a bunch of his photos on his phone discovered. I lied. I didn't do it. I don't know how it happened. I don't know. Maybe it was that. I don't know. Because I was responsible for my dad's feelings. It was my job. It was priority one, was making sure he never felt upset. So when I hear stuff like this, I'm like, oh my God, wow, that's crazy. So anyway, back to Joe.
Those are the patterns.
Okay, so let's walk through each of these, and I want to hear where that part of the pattern comes from and how it shows up for people.
Yeah. So the first one is wants. So it's very hard for someone to be able to identify their wants and or ask for what they want, because in childhood, that was not an okay thing. Hey, your job is to make me feel better so I don't criticize you or make you feel guilty or so that I show up for you. And so therefore your wants aren't important, my wants are important. So your job is to neglect your wants, not pay attention to your wants, or at least strategize to get your wants met by pleasing me or taking care of me.
Just real quick, whenever I was growing up, the last thing I would ever do was go to my father or my stepmother and indicate that I wanted something. Now, if my stepmother handled this, gave me a Christmas list to make, then totally different story. I could, make my Christmas list, and all the kids did. But I was never, none of us. It was not there was never the opportunity to go up to Frank or Deborah Wright and say, hey, there's this thing I saw on TV. I want that. Not a toy, a pair of shoes. I remember one time whenever my stepmother took me and bought me a pair of black Nikes with a gold swoosh at Bell's department store. And it was outside of school, back to school. Back to school is whenever we would go school shopping, and my grandmother would always buy our back to school shoes. And for some reason, I had worn mine out. I needed a new pair. And my stepmother took me to Bell's and bought me this pair of shoes that were outside of the normal order of when we got things. And I was just like, whoa. I mean, it was like, because you didn't do that. I would never go to my dad and ask for anything. You just didn't do that. I remember one time, my friend said, this is before I was old enough to have a job. I was like in 7th grade, and we were about to go to a football game with a church group. And I needed money for the ticket and food for the trip whenever I went. And I had no money. I was in 7th grade, no way of making money. And I could not go to my dad. You just didn't do that. The thought of going up to my dad and saying, Dad, can I have some money for the football game? That's just laughable to even think about. So I brought him, I had a bunch of change saved up, a coin collection and some change. I don't know how much it was. I took it to him and I said, Dad, I'm going to the football game. Would you mind changing this for some cash? And he said, no, I don't want that. And he gave me $5. $5, and you could tell it pissed him off. $5 to go to pay for my ticket, any snacks, whatever, for that football game. But you didn't ask for things. And so therefore, that was the model that I had. And so many of you that you experience that sort of thing, you're like, we don't know how to ask for things, because asking for things puts the other person out, puts them in a bad mood, makes them have to do something they don't want to do. And we're just not going to do that, because we're responsible for their happiness. We're responsible for their how they feel. And we think that asking them for something is going to make them feel bad. And we don't want to do that. No, that's where it comes from.
Mm-hmm. And so that's the pattern, is not to be able to own your wants outright. It's either they're covertly taken care of by making you happy, or they are subjugated because I need to stay safe. And the only way to do that is to make you happy. Mm-hmm. And so that's the pattern of what makes wants very, very hard for self-reliant people to be able to identify and to ask for. Yeah. And when they ask for them, they typically feel very vulnerable, because what's happening in that pattern is, if I acknowledge when I'm a kid that my wants aren't going to be satisfied by my parents, then I have to also recognize that I'm not being taken care of, that the world isn't safe. And that's very overwhelming for a kid. So what a kid does instead is they're like, okay, how do I make you happy? And they just focus there.
Mm-hmm. What are some signs, if you're to look through your life to see, is this happening? What are some of the smoke signals to look for?
Yeah. So if you're a manager, it's really easy to find. It's ask each one of your direct reports what success looks like. And if they can't tell you what success looks like, then they don't know what you want. Mm. If they can't tell you specifically what success looks like, I'm supposed to get 10 new customers and 5 million in revenue next year, then they don't know what success looks like. It means you're not clear about your wants. That's a easy example. Yeah. The other example is look at your wife, husband, good friend, and just decide, I'm going to tell them 3 things that I want. And if your stomach goes, oh shit, then you are definitely not, then this is a pattern that you're in, right? Yeah. That I feel vulnerable asking for what I want. The other way to know it is like there's some people who just heard that thing that I said, 3 wants. They're like, I don't have wants. What are you talking about? That also tells you you're in the pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. The first one's a really interesting example because it also shows the role reversal, because now you're in the role of the manager. And if your direct reports don't know what success looks like in a verifiable way, then what's left for them is to make you happy.
Right.
To keep their job.
That's right.
Or to excel or be promoted.
Right.
Which means you've now taken on the role that your parents had with you.
Which is super ironic because so this gets us into the second part of the pattern, which is like authority issues. And so typically what happens there is that you look at the authority and the authority didn't take care of you. And so you're saying, I don't want to be an authority, but I also don't want some schmuck like that being my authority. So you're in this weird place where you're saying, I don't want to have an authority above me, and I don't want to be the authority. It's an incredibly insidious pattern, that one in particular, especially for managers. They feel like they're oppressing people by being clear with their wants. They're oppressing people by being very specific about like the needs and the roles. And so they don't own the authority in the room. So typically, if they're not owning that authority, then other people will fight over the authority, which means there's more it's more of a political environment than otherwise. And if they happen to own it, if they're like, I don't want to be the authority, but they own it in this very, very hard way because they feel guilty about owning it. So they'll be like, yes, do it this way, and da-da-da. And they do it in this way that's like very hard for the other person. So it's like more dictatorial or totalitarian in their approach because they feel like they're wrong for having it.
Which might have been how the wants of their parents were expressed to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So, but they also are not okay with somebody being over them, or if they're over them, they're kind of undermining the person who's over them. And it's a hard one for folks because at some point you have to recognize, oh, actually people want my authority in the room. And they want to be listened to, and they want my authority in the room. They want to be clear about what I want, and they also want me to be reasonable in that conversation.
This was one of the hardest things for me to get as a business leader. So when I bought my first business, I remember this is something I dealt with very early on. I escaped from corporate America simply because I could not stand the people that I was dealing with. I did not want to, I had very little respect for the leadership that I was dealing with. And then whenever I became the owner of my own company for the first time, I didn't want to ask anyone to do anything for me. I felt like I was oppressing them. I felt like, well, if there's anything that I can do, I should do it myself. I should never ask anyone to do anything for me. And what I have learned in business, and this is, again, something I've had to share with Jimlin, is that people want to be led. If they didn't, then they themselves would own a business or be somewhere where they were the leader. I had this conversation with one of our employees who's been with us for a long time who thought she wanted to be a manager. I explained to her, I said, now you have to understand what comes with being a manager and having to tell people to do things and having to get work done through other people. It's not an easy task because you don't want to upset them. You want to, it takes skill. And frankly, it was skills that she didn't have, and she knew that. And so it was something that was real hard for me. And I never knew that any of that had to do with how I grew up and the way that I had interacted with my parents. But now that I do, it makes it easier for me to improve because it's still something I deal with. I just cannot stand asking people to do things for me. That's why there was some deal I did where there's 3 motivators that we have, like power, pleasure, and I think power, pleasure, and prestige maybe. And it's like one of them is something that deep down you're really after. And whenever the question was power, that was absolutely not me. I have no desire for power. This is why. It's because with power comes getting people to do things and being over people, but at the same time, I don't like power over me at all. I do not like that. I like to be completely free and independent to make those decisions. But again, when you become someone who you're not going to be able to tell people what you need them to do to execute, and yet you're not someone who readily receives direction, then you're all alone by yourself, constantly trying to figure things out, which takes longer. You may not make the best choices. I mean, we all have shortcomings. So, man, this just really, really speaking to me. And
they want an authority that meets them in their own authority.
Correct.
Not dominates them.
Correct. And that's a beautiful point, that oftentimes the CEO who can't entirely own their authority, there's a whole bunch of weirdness that happens underneath them. Either the people also can't own their authority, and so that gets weird, or the person's like super authority driven because they're trying to make up for the lack of authority. Mm-hmm. And so they're like very totalitarian in their approach.
I've actually seen this firsthand. A company that I was a part of, the CEO hated CEOing. He did not want to be a CEO. Super nice guy, did not want to exert his leadership. Now, what he would do is that would boil up and he'd get pissed off, and he would channel that desire to make things happen through other people in the company. And you watched other executives, one in which became the tyrant, the authoritarian, that would just go through the entire organization and wreak havoc, ram more people off than you can possibly imagine. And then other executives who just tried to stay out of the line of fire. They didn't want any authority. They were scared to take it on. And you just ended up with just people coming and going and quitting, and no one happy, no sense of direction. It was an absolute mess. I saw this one firsthand. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about wants, we've talked about authority.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
Self-reliant people are usually incredibly hard at getting their own needs met.
I'm curious, just for right now, how do you distinguish between the wants pattern that we just discussed and the needs pattern? How do you distinguish between the wants and the needs, and how this shows up in self-reliance?
Yeah, so needs are the things that you actually have to do to thrive, right? So in this particular case, it's like, are you getting enough sleep? Are you getting the right kind of diet? Are you nurturing yourself? Are you taking care of yourself? Just the human essence of like, what do I need to thrive? Wants, I'm distinguishing as, I don't need to justify it. I just want it, right? And so wants is more of the evolutionary drive. I evolve because I'm following my wants, like a little kid is following their want to walk, their want to play with the bigger kids, their want to fit in with the older generation. That's the thing that pushes us through evolution. Our needs are just the things that we need to take care of ourselves. And so there's a distinction between, do I take care of myself and do I express my wants? Mm-hmm. And so that's the distinction I'm making. And so typically the way that they see their needs is weakness. I don't have them. And like a kind of an ignoring of the needs is like typically how they see them. Super self-reliant people, like I have in the past, will be food, water, shelter. That's it. Those are the only things I need. The needs for thriving, completely not even in their, perspective whatsoever. And they generally don't take care of themselves very well. They might like take care of their body because they're trying to shape their body into something, but they're not actually like, what are my needs? How do I care for myself? It's not part of their.
Yeah.
And the weird part about the needs is that because their needs weren't met at a young age, they have this like little child, like why don't you see me? Why aren't you like petting me? Why can't you like nurture me? Where's the person who's going to say, yes, you are strong and you're going to be okay? It's like there's this desire in the self-reliant person to have like this care that is very, very young. And it's something that nobody can actually give them, because it's really the only kind of care that can be given between a mom and dad and a kid. It's like that deep attunement, but they're craving it and they're expecting it and they never get it. And so they use it to prove that they aren't going to get their needs met.
Yeah.
How do you know when you're in the needs is that you're just not taking care of yourself and you're not allowing other people to take care of you.
But in the needs, you mean, how do you know that you're running this pattern where you don't know your
Correct.
needs or you're not addressing your needs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know you're not taking care of yourself. You know you're not nurturing yourself. Maybe you don't even know how. You're in some sort of weird should game of you should do it, but I'm not doing it. But why aren't you doing it? Like, then you know that you're in that pattern.
Okay, so that's wants, authority, needs, and there's two more.
Yeah, having a hard time expressing when you're hurt. Because if they express hurt, it means it's acknowledging and admitting that they actually need somebody.
Oof. Nailed me right between the eyes. You can't hurt me. I can't be hurt. And even if I am, I'm never going to admit it, because that would be a sign of weakness. That would show you where that button is that you might be able to punch. This one got me, man. And I've said this to Jimlin a million times. No one can hurt my feelings. I don't allow people to hurt my feelings. Yeah, my feelings can get hurt just like everybody else's, but so hard to admit. So, man, so much of this just flying all over me right now.
It's also acknowledging and admitting that there's somebody who can upset them, right? So as a kid, what happens is, okay, somebody's not taking care of me. That hurts. But if I acknowledge that, then again, my world is falling apart. I'm acknowledging that I'm basically in this wide open world with no one taking care of me. So instead, I think, what did I do? How do I take care of it? I must have done something wrong that pissed off my parents. And so there's this kind of constant reflection of hurt of like, how do I manage this situation? How do I make the situation right? Instead of just saying, ouch. Really, really hard for self-reliant people to just go, ouch. And super effective. Right, when they make
versus
that bump,
getting defensive or turning it around,
or managing the person and making the like, oh, I can't count on you, so I'm going to do it myself, which actually makes a person unreliable. Generally, that's the pattern. Is like, I just can't express my hurt.
Yeah,
which is interesting, because what that does is, oh, I can't express my hurt, so the people around me don't know that I'm hurting, so they don't come to help me. And so, nobody's here to help me.
This is one of the things that I have noticed in two ways, and maybe you can relate to this. There's two things people rarely do, and that's one, come to my aid, which I don't think I'd need a lot of help with a lot of things. So let's just be clear. It's not like I'm out here like having all these needs, or maybe I'm just projecting what Joe's saying. I don't know. It's kind of weird right now. But another thing is that people feel very confident in telling me whatever's on their mind, taking stabs at me, joking with me, talking about, I don't know, what I'm wearing, a personal appearance, that I know cognitively, if I were to flip it around and say the same thing to them, then I would be an asshole and they wouldn't want to be around me, and I would get slammed. But people can, kind of make me the mark of a joke or something, because they're like, well, nothing bothers Jason. He's uber confident, self-assured. Some might say arrogant and cocky, which Joe talks about, is that people that are self-reliant, they often get thought of as arrogant or something like that, because if we ever exude normal human behavior, then somehow it gets flipped back on us as the problem, whenever it might be, well, you're the one that cast the insult at me and I'm just responding in kind. But you set up this steely appearance that you can take anything and you don't need any help. And it's not the other people's fault. It's you have projected that to them and they're just acting in kind.
Right. They see you as, oh, that person's probably fine. They always seem to be fine. And so you never get the support.
So why would I offer any help? And when it also means people will lack empathy for you, because like when you're behaving in such a way that's not attuned to others, or like, correct,
they're going to assume that it's just because you're an asshole, not because you're hurting.
Yeah, this is another great example of like in adulthood. So I went through a 17-year horrible marriage that I endured an enormous amount of pain from. And my parents really didn't see, they were not very, and to this day are not sympathetic to it at all. They've never been like meeting Jimlin and our relationship, which is absolutely phenomenal. I'm so blessed, and just she's such an example of God's restorative nature. My parents are not like, oh man, thank God, our son, he was able to endure that pain, and now he's got someone so wonderful. They've never done that, and they never. When I was single for all the years I was, and having come out of just this hellish relationship that did yield two amazingly gorgeous, beautiful, wonderful daughters, then they weren't. There was no sympathy, but a lot of it's because I didn't allow them. I didn't ask them for help. I didn't let them know about any pain and what I might be enduring. And the reason why is because I didn't think I could depend on them. Because I had grown up with, these are two people that, especially from my stepmother's standpoint, that they have somehow uniquely overcome odds in life, marriage, parenthood, everything that no other parent has, including their own children. That for some reason, my stepmother has this mindset that every other human being out there has had it infinitely better than her, that no one can understand hers and my father's struggle that they have. It's just it's been uniquely challenging and as a parent. And, and so therefore I'm like, well, y'all's struggle was so hard and everything, man, no matter what I'm going through, it can't be as, hard as anything y'all have been through. And even if I think it is, you're not going to listen to it. You're going to immediately tell me how bad y'all had it. But if I try to, so I can't depend on you. So therefore, it just perpetuates this ridiculous cycle.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So
and then
number five.
So the last one is that they take responsibility for other people's happiness. They've been entrained into this pattern of, oh, if I make you happy, my boss, my board, customers, wife, then I will get my needs met. And so that happens. And it actually happens often with employees too, where a CEO, super self-reliant, thinks that they're responsible for everybody's happiness instead of treating people like adults. Mm-hmm. I'm responsible for your happiness rather than you're responsible for doing your job. And then if you do your job, you get to be happy. Like the same way if I do my job, I get to be happy or get to keep the job or whatever it is. And so typically that's part of the pattern. And it comes obviously from their job was to take care of their parent instead of being taken care of by their parent.
Yeah. And my guess is that often shows up not as actually caring for the people, but doing some form of taking care. Like, here's your employee of the month plaque to make you more productive, rather than really, hey, what do you need to succeed in this role? What clarity do you need from me? How can I support you in greater autonomy and responsibility? Yeah.
The distinction is that it's fear-based. I'm not going to have that conversation because my employee might get mad at me. I'm not going to have that conversation because the employee might leave. I'm not going to have that conversation because then I'm going to be seen as a dick. It's care out of fear rather than care out of our natural tendency to care for people.
Yeah. Or out of empowerment.
That's right. So that's how you know it.
Yeah.
The way you know that you're in that pattern is because when you think that you're caring for somebody, and then the idea is like, no, do a counteraction. You're like, no, I couldn't do that because they might get upset, because they might leave, because they might break.
Which is a sign that you're managing them.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is a fear-based move. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's how you know you're in it.
Right. So for those of us who have been listening and are seeing some scary things.
Yeah.
What can someone who's listening or watching this do?
Yeah, I think before we go into that, I think it's important to talk about like how the self-sabotage mechanism and all of these things work.
Yeah.
Right? Because the way that our brain works is, right, I'm not asking for help. I'm not identifying my help because it's not going to come. I can't rely on the people. I'm not asking for what I want because people don't care what I want. They only care about themselves. Or there's a self-sabotage mechanism, and there's proof, because the way that we create our worlds, it proves that we're right about these things, right? And so I think it's important to like go through that, because if you don't see how you sabotage it, then it's really hard to fix it, because anything you do to fix it can be a self-sabotage.
So let's go through them in order, starting with the pattern of not owning your wants, not recognizing your wants, not sharing your wants.
Yeah.
How does self-sabotage show up in that pattern?
Right. So oftentimes a couple of things can happen. So You don't show your wants. This is the most obvious one. You don't show your wants. People don't need them, but you think you've shown your wants. Well, of course they know what I want. Of course it's their job as the CMO to, market. So why they're not marketing? See, I can't count on them. Mm-hmm. That's one way, because you haven't been super explicit about what your wants are. That's one way in which we can kind of prove that our wants aren't going to be met. The other way that we prove our wants aren't going to be met is because when we say our wants, we say them with so much harshness because we're scared they're not going to be met, that people rebel against it, right? So instead of saying like I just need you to get this, like I just need, when I come home from working all day, I just want my fucking dinner ready. Can you just make my dinner ready? Like, you're not working, you're just taking care of the kids, right? Like, you're not going to get your wants met that way.
Right.
You know what I mean? As compared to like, oh, wow, I just noticed when I'm coming home super exhausted, and how do we take care of a situation so that I can have 40 minutes of downtime, just get some food so I can like recharge, so I can be here for you for the rest of the night, et cetera, right? There's a lot of ways to ask, and that isn't going to be harsh. And so oftentimes,
well, the second version that you just did there was also not just directly an ask. It was an invitation for collaboration.
Correct.
And like, how do we do this together? Not here's what I need and you're responsible for meeting it, which is the flip that we talked about before.
Yes.
Like, you might find yourself in a relationship where somebody does feel like their job is to make you happy, and then you end up in that situation.
And oftentimes the person who has the self-reliance pattern, it gets resentful of the people around them because they're not there for them. Like, I have to take care of you, but you're not taking care of me back. And the more that resentment builds, the harsher the ask, the more indirect it is. And even it's just a very direct, kind ask is like, babe, I am exhausted. I would love it if, you could do dinners, great. But it's probably going to sound like, babe, I'm so fucking exhausted and I do breakfast, and like I often cook all weekend. So could you like just do dinners, please? So just even in the directness of the ask and the open-heartedness of the ask, once the resentment comes because you feel like you have to take care of other people, that resentment is there instead of, oh, I'm choosing to do this and I get to choose when I don't want to do it.
Yeah. How does the self-sabotage show up in authority?
So that one, obviously, see, I have created a power vacuum by not owning my authority. Now there's people fighting over who's in control. And so, see, they don't want me to be an authority because they're fighting for control. Like, they're fighting me for, like, they're stepping all over me, right? Because when people fight for a control, it's the person who's supposed to be in control, whose authority it is, immediately takes that as a challenge. And so clear evidence that, they don't want me in charge. They don't like authority. They want to be in control themselves. They don't. They want you to own your power and for them to own their power. So that's like one example of it. The other example of it is that because you're not owning your authority in your room, everybody's frustrated with you. And so you're like, see, they're frustrated with me because I'm an authority, but they're actually just frustrated because they don't have a clear understanding of what they need to do to succeed, or because you're not handling the situations that the authority is supposed to handle, so they have to handle them, so they're resentful.
Yeah. To offer a little pushback there, you said like they don't want you not owning your authority. They want you in your authority, and they want themselves in theirs.
Yeah. The world is also inherently safe. That's also true. Like, far more safe than it is unsafe. But both are true. And like, we want to believe.
What is the question? Like, what is it that wants to be safe? The identity,
exactly.
The physical body, like,
right. Exactly. And so, but to actually sit with that reality, well, wow, it's like, it is unsafe, and I can own that, and I am out of control, and I can own that, and I can feel that, allows you to actually have a lot more agency over what you do have control over and what is, right? Because if you're just like, I can control everything, you're kind of perpetually keeping yourself back from what's actually right. So
it's a lack of participation, and the what you're talking about is an invitation to deeper participation. Yeah, the world is unsafe.
Yeah.
I am part of the unsafeness that the world is.
Yeah.
And there's actually something deeply safe in acknowledging and recognizing that, because now there's nothing to protect, there's nothing to defend, but there is a lot to care for. There's a lot to...
That's the emotional side of it. Just on the logistics side of it, there's a whole nother, like, if you look at organizations that become more and more decentralized, Uber from taxi cabs or limo services, where you rely on people to actually like be at the right place, but you don't tell them to do it. You don't have the control. You just set up the rules of engagement. Mm-hmm. GM to Toyota is another example of decentralization. Just the more autonomy and decentralization you have, the bigger and faster things grow. AA is a great decentralized approach. It's like book clubs. Like these things grow exponentially fast. They're amazing, but you can't get there if you're a control freak. And if you're super self-reliant, you have a high tendency to be a control freak, because you're trying to take care of everything and make sure that you're the one taking care of everything, right? So you lose this leverage of, oh, I don't need to take care of everything. I just need to set up the situation so it can. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to just see those solutions when you are in self-reliant mode. So it also just holds you back from being able to do massive things in the world. It's a fascinating thing. But at the end of the day, on the self-reliance pattern, the trick is open heart, feel your grief, feel your fear. Allow yourself to like go through that early childhood experience, feel everything that you weren't allowed to feel as a kid, heal that, and then allow yourself to break these 5 patterns with an open heart. And then that will change everything. And then all of a sudden you have like all these new opportunities. You get to really see how you're affecting the world and your company and your family. And it just gives you so much more leverage.
Well, there you have it, folks. I cut that a little bit short. I took some of it out, but I left what I thought was kind of the meatiest parts of that segment in that Joe did. And I hope you found it useful. I mean, the bottom line is, if we're ever going to get serious about self-improvement, we have to understand not just how to improve, but we're improving from. What caused the deficiency in our operating system that we're trying to improve upon? What caused that glitch, that shortcoming? So let's pull that up by the root and put in new thoughts, new behaviors, new actions, new solutions that will then make that improvement we're seeking that much easier. Thanks for listening. I'm Jason, and I'm out.
This episode of The Jason Wright Show is sponsored by Authentic Health. At Authentic Health, we believe real health starts at the cellular level. In today's world, stress, processed foods, environmental toxins, and poor sleep are working against your body every single day. If you want to take control of your health and build a stronger foundation, visit shopauthentichealth.com and use promo code JASON to get 10% off your first order. That's promo code JASON for 10% off at Authentic Health.